A very good morning to all the participants. I feel happy. It is delighted to see all the participants again for the third day of the session. And today we are going to have Dr. Anbu Arumugam, Associate Professor, Department of Public Administration, Presidency College, Chennai, a senior researcher, a sincere and a dedicated researcher, and she has published articles in magazines and journals. Besides her academic activities, Madam has also proved administrative skills. Madam was a licensed officer of Annamalai University Study Center in Chennai. During her tenure, she has demonstrated her administrative skills, which was appreciated by the higher authorities of the Annamalai University. Madam has conducted international seminars and conferences also, and she has visited abroad to attend international seminars and conferences, and has possessed the oratory skills. So she is going to talk on India's COVID-19 diplomacy, a very vital and a sensitive topic, which is a highly relevant topic today. So I expect all the participants to make use of her lecture. As usual, at the end of the lecture, you note down your questions and doubts. At the end of the lecture, we have the session. There you can get your clarifications now. Now I request and I invite Dr. Anbu Arumugam to take charge and deliver her lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Very good morning to all the participants, my colleagues and my peers. So I hope and wish all of you are staying safe during these tough times and challenging times. That's health is first and foremost priority. And once again, I thank our department for being a front runner in organizing these very highly relevant and sought after courses. So, and I'm grateful for my department for giving me an opportunity, my HOD, Dr. C. Subramaniam sir, and the technical team from Dr. Balamurugan sir to helping us out throughout the lecture. So thank you and very proud of our department for extending these kind of courses. And today, in this very important course on new international order, I'll be taking a session on India's COVID diplomacy. It's a very interesting theme, and it's going to be an interesting lecture because the content, while I was researching to understand India's diplomacy, especially from the perspective of COVID-19, brought out a lot of interesting aspects which we may not be aware. So it adds to the knowledge that we are all seeking during these times. Apart from handling ourselves and near and dear ones, we are also seeking for learning, which never stops. So in this time, I'm happy to be able to contribute to this particular stream with a small session today on COVID diplomacy. So let me share my PowerPoint with you. Kindly bear with me. Just a few seconds, please. So currently, this is the state that we are in. I like this picture which I found online while I was preparing for the PowerPoint. It kind of symbolizes the situation that the entire globe seems to find itself right now. No country is an exception. Either they have passed through the first wave or currently in the second wave. We don't have many countries who have reached the third wave yet. So COVID-19 has challenged and changed our perspectives from a daily perspective to a short-term and long-term perspective, be it a government, be it a state, be it a region, be it any kind of alliance, be it individually from ourselves too. It has definitely challenged our daily lives, what we have known as normal all these years. Today we find ourselves stepping into or being pushed into what is being touted as the new normal. The new normal within quotes. We don't know what is the new normal because we are all in the stage of entering, into the new normal. Likewise, internationally, all the countries, all the allegiances, and all the alliances are being pushed into a new international order. So, what is this new international order? It has many dimensions. One of it is individual countries' diplomacy, the effort that goes behind the scenes, during these kind of crises. A pandemic struggle. The word pandemic comes from three words. See, we need to understand before the pandemic, there is a stage called endemic. Endemic, pandemic, and before it is epidemic. So we are currently in stage 2, that is the pandemic stage. Stage 1 is epidemic, and finally, the COVID-19 is expected to become an endemic, meaning it will be present permanently in a particular region or within a particular population, maybe during a particular season. That is what we call as an endemic. So we need to be first clear about these three terms. That is quite appropriate before we understand or contextualize efforts that are being taken by international organizations, countries, aid agencies, and within any country by groups. So the World Health Organization initially declared COVID-19 as a pandemic before moving on to as an epidemic before moving on to pandemic, and we are expected to become, to go into the stage of endemic soon. Now, the only possible comparisons that we have are the 1902 plague and the 1980 Spanish flu. But given the time period, beyond 100 years, the technology, the development, the population, the way internationally countries are aligned, all these have changed our very understanding of epidemics in the current globe. So the possible comparisons, if at all any, can be taken back, can be referenced to the 1918 Spanish flu and the plague. And the globalized society that we are living in means that it's becoming a shared phenomenon. A small virus, a bacterial or a viral infection, which stems from animal to human or otherwise, started off in a distant province in a particular country. But today, it seems to have slowly advanced, and it has transcended boundaries and has actually causing a huge catastrophe, not only health-wise, but economy-wise, not only killing lives, but also destroying livelihoods. It's easier to save a life, but whether it is easier to provide livelihood, that is the huge challenge, that dilemma that countries are facing now. So some of them are unable to decide, some countries have decided, some have decided prematurely. And we are all, seeing the consequences, which are all interconnected, panning out in the last few months. Now, what is the background of COVID-19? Now, you can see some of the pictures that I've put out on this slide are quite symbolic of the struggle that we are seeing internationally and nationally. The economic growth curve that is expected to, go into a downward trend is also being projected by several organizations. We have the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, the World Economic Forum, and regional banks, and all the national banks are also coming out with several projections. Every day we are seeing new estimates, but none of them sound greatly positive at this point of time. Maybe after the peak of COVID is reached in another 2 to 3 months, hopefully we'll see a positive trend. Before we go into the actual core content of the session, I would like you to understand a few things which is in the background of this particular session. We've already seen what is an epidemic, pandemic, endemic continuum. Xenocentrism. This has been one of the major debates that has shaped this coronavirus COVID-19 syndrome that we have. So having originated in China, having the virus, the infection, having started from there, has now spread to almost several countries in the world now. Many are suffering in a very differential manner. There is no equitable approach to this. So there has been a lot of criticism openly, covertly, and overtly. In fact, the World Health Organization has even started investigation, not into any particular country, mind you, but to trace the origin of the infection, so that in future, this is going to be the major challenge, controlling infectious diseases. So in the future, to have some common learning, some common experiences to share with countries, some kind of an investigation has been started. India is one of the signatories, I think, of 81 countries who have signed the petition. Another important phenomenon that we are seeing is nativist tendencies, protectionism. So lockdown is one measure to protect or contain COVID-19. But lockdown has also been presumed to be very nativist. By shutting your borders, we seem to think that we can actually control the spread. So that is seen to be taken in a very different manner by different countries. For example, European Union, the classic example we can take is European Union. They seem to have shut their borders very soon, though European Union is like, you can go within the countries in the Schengen areas, you can travel, you don't need a passport as such. It's like a single nation for all practical purposes, but they immediately shut their borders, but they're still reeling under the effect. So that nativist tendencies we're seeing, hegemonic nature of the contemporary world order, extreme nationalism. So when we say hegemonic tendencies, we mean dominance, trying to dominate the whole narrative, trying to portray yourself as a single most effective source. That kind of a nature has been visible now. Hypernationalism. When we say hypernationalism, we mean extreme nationalism, trying to be protectionist, among yourselves before trying to reach out. Lack of compassion. What is crisis and what is an emergency? One of the most commonly used couple of words, but there is a huge difference between crisis and emergency. Crisis is what we are going through now. An emergency, to give you an example, will probably be an earthquake. A tsunami could have been called an emergency, but a crisis is something which encompasses, transcends boundaries, and affects a huge population, probably at the same time, in the same timeline. That is what is called as a crisis. COVID-19 is essentially a crisis that we are all facing right now. Now, what is needed is basically global leadership, common and consistent directionality, parallel resolve. Everybody should have that resolve. When we say parallel, we mean that everyone concerned should have the same resolve to actually stay on course in handling this crisis and the fallouts of this crisis. Now, coming to India's leadership and diplomacy, which is the core part of this lecture, these are some pointers which I have put together for a better understanding of what we are actually trying to give you. Now, recently, the World Health Organization chief, Tedros, he appreciated India very much for India's contribution, not only at the national level, but also for the international outreach that India has been doing since March, particularly for COVID-19. He said, in his words, the world is in desperate need of national unity and global solidarity. And there is a lot of politicization of the pandemic, which is actually removing the focus away from the pandemic itself. So this was his concern. So I've been following him on Twitter, and I think he's one of the good speakers and who gives out very reassuring, positive messages when the whole world is watching, who. Leadership can actually lessen the human cost or the damage to livelihoods. So this has been seen previously also, and good leadership has the capacity to actually handle something like this, which is a huge crisis, a mammoth crisis, which we have not seen in the last 100 years. Some of the countries actually stand testimony to good leadership. We have seen many articles, many scholarly research articles which have been put out in the research realm. Please remember, you're all faculties attending this particular program. So much of research output is coming out nationally, internationally, in several areas, not only with regard to vaccine development, not only with regard to leadership. Several aspects, several journals, international and national journals are coming out with special issues. They are planning several publications with regard to COVID-19. That is the amount of research and scholarly output that is being pushed because of the demand of this nature. So if you were a journal or a university who was working on a focused research area previously, now you have been pushed to bring out more literature, more knowledge, more practical experiences from around the globe. So that is one thing that we need to understand, that literature has been coming out. The WHO was also appreciative of India's very early lockdown. Please remember, India was one of the countries which went into a lockdown, self-imposed lockdown, much earlier. India's caseload was just 536 live cases at the time that India decided to go in for a lockdown nationally. Today, the numbers, I think this morning, the 8 o'clock press release, India has crossed 4,75,000 overall caseloads. The active case is around 1,81,000 as of 8 o'clock this morning. So the World Health Organization was very, very appreciative of that measure. Now coming into the efforts. So what has India actually done? We say India's COVID diplomacy. I've given you a topic. We've started the lecture, half an hour into the lecture. So what has India actually done? India has done a lot, mind you. That is why I've been able to put together so much in such a short time. Now, this picture pretty much symbolizes the single most important contribution of India for the, for several countries. In fact, India has provided this particular medicine, which was touted as an important source of treatment, identified as an important source of treatment. There are several debates whether it is an accepted method of treatment even now. But initially it was 3-4 months back, India exported to, as of June 3rd week, 133 countries. India has exported this medicine to 133 countries across the world. That is a massive achievement. It is actually famously called as pillbox diplomacy by several people. Now, United States was one of the countries which in fact tried to arm twist India into exporting it. But please remember, India was not arm twisted. India actually extended this gesture to several countries. The first among them was United States. The president, Mr. Trump himself, was a solid believer that this medicine can be a possible treatment for COVID-19. Now, India actually had a law in place to curb the exports of essential medicines and raw materials. But after the requirement from several countries and the international stand on this particular medicine, hydrochloroquine, India actually lifted its moratorium on exports, which is a very appreciable gesture. Beginning of the lecture, we talked about compassion, solidarity. Now, this is an example of compassion, that kind of a compassion to fellow human beings transcending borders. So that's a solid example of a country extending its diplomatic reach during times of crisis like this. So there is a tweet in the slide of Mr. Trump, US President, appreciating our Prime Minister for actually doing this. Now, these kind of goodwill hampers were actually sent to many countries on a goodwill basis. When we say goodwill, let's say that India did not send it on a commercial basis. They gave it in kind. Now, nearly 21 countries were given on a commercial basis, and almost 34 countries were given on a special grant. This was way back in April. Now we are almost towards the end of June. Apart from this, several countries in Africa, in Europe, and in North America and South America were provided these medicines during that time. India is one of the few countries which produces high amounts of hydrochloroxicone. So it was able to do that without compromising domestic need. Remember, India is also a hugely populated country. The generosity of India or the diplomatic effort by India was not unnoticed. As you can see, I've produced the tweets of, given by some of the global heads who received such packages. Very warm words of appreciation for India for its diplomatic outreach. Now, several countries have appreciated the kind of flexibility and statesmanship that India has produced. In fact, the World Health Organization's Regional Emergency Director, Dr. Rodrigo Offrin, actually said India is one country which is known as the pharmacy of the world. There is a reason why we are called as a pharmacy of the world, and that is the reason we are able to provide these kind of outreaches at such a short time. You remember, international travel is banned. Sea, air and road travel is banned by all countries. Travel within each country itself is highly restricted. The logistics in managing this kind of packages is very, very difficult, very complex. Not so easy like taking a car today and going to buy a grocery, or vegetables. So the planning that goes into this kind of outreaches is huge, given that at home India is facing a huge outbreak itself. Now today we have another drug which is being currently tested in United Kingdom. This is also seen as another important method of treatment, dexamethasone. And if anybody is from the pharmacy background here, I'm sure they'll recognize it. This is also very commonly and highly produced in India. So India is again going to be seen as another important source for this cheap drug, generic drug which is being produced in India. Recently, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Secretary General, Vladimir Norov, he actually said that India is actually playing the role of the pharmacy of the world. Highly compassionate, highly flexible and highly diplomatic efforts by India are actually saving more lives across countries, not only within India. He actually appreciated India's vast experience in the field of medicine, in health management, in production, in high quality affordable medicines and equipment and vaccines. And one of the main reasons is India is the largest producer of generic medicines in the world. We account for 20% of the world production, and we meet 62% of the global demand for vaccines. These are some of the facts that we need to understand, slowly absorb before we understand statements, wide-reaching statements like pharmacy of the world, etc. So not for nothing, we are called as pharmacy of the world. Not for nothing, we are able to ramp up production in these testing times. In normal times, it's very easy, it's business. But in these times, it's very difficult. So this singular diplomatic effort is very highly appreciated across the globe. Regional wise, the second important aspect of India's diplomacy is neighborhood first policy. Now, you can't choose your neighbors. It's a very famous saying that we have. But India has troublesome neighbors. We all know the history and we all know what's happening right now. But without deviating, we need to understand that India organized the SAARC meeting, given the coronavirus situation, way back on March 15th, 2020. March 15th seems like last year. Now, given the 3 months that we are almost in lockdown, India organized a very early meeting with the SAARC, the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. And some of the steps have been very highly appreciated given the nature of the geopolity here and also given the nature of the economy of the SAARC countries. So not all of them are doing really well economically. So India actually was termed as the first responder in this region, which is a major tag to be associated with. India has done a lot of work in the region with regard to coronavirus. We set up what is called as a SAARC emergency fund. India actually initially made a donation of 10 million US dollars to the SAARC emergency fund. This fund is different, wherein anybody, the SAARC countries, can individually pool in money and take out money for their own countries, meaning there is a lot of flexibility involved monetarily. It was a very unique step, a good step And also, India proposed sharing of common resources, pooling of common resources such as medical teams, medical equipment, medical product producers, which can be shared across to all these nations. We will see that later part in the lecture. So these are some of the initiatives that were taken initially in India's neighborhood first policy. During these kind of crisis times, these kind of measures stand out in the long run. It may not give any short-term gain, but this is what ultimately humanity is all about. This picture is a very important picture. I'm sure most of you would have seen this picture before. If not, let me introduce you. I don't have to introduce the gentleman to our extreme right. He's our Prime Minister. But the gentleman in the middle of the picture is Mr. Ajit Doval. He is our National Security Advisor, the NSA for India. And the gentleman to the extreme left, illustrious diplomat, Mr. S. Jaishankar, who is currently India's External Affairs Minister. These three are at the helm. They hold the leadership with regard to India's diplomatic efforts, even before and specifically now. The third particular focus of this particular session will be India's medical assistance plan. Please have a careful look at this slide. India has drawn up a $1 billion COVID-19 medical assistance plan. The target is to reach 90 countries. Mind you, 90 countries. All this is happening in the background of your own country suffering, from this crisis. Please remember, India is handling two things: national crisis and also reaching out internationally. That is the ideal, scope of humanity and compassion that we are all talking about. In a way, we can say it's a global leadership, that India is taking over. Now, firstly, 29 countries across the IOR region, or known as the Indian Ocean region, they have been delivered consignments in the Gulf, Central Asia, countries like Ukraine, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, and even remotely located countries like Ecuador, the Dominican Republic. A lot of consignments were delivered. And INS Kesari, it is called as the Operation Samudra Setu. Samudra Setu means ocean, Samudra Setu means bridge. And India's landing ship INS Kesari is actually currently navigating Indian Ocean with 5,600 tons of medical supplies to several countries, specifically Madagascar, Maldives, Comoros, and Seychelles. So as I'm speaking right now, the ship is in its trajectory and it will be delivering all these supplies, medical teams, medical personnel, and capacity building. India is also trying a new thing. During the crisis itself, we always learn after the crisis. But right now, during the crisis, India is actually doing capacity building, training of trainers programs in several of these small countries who are actually struggling more than us. So with lack of manpower, lack of skilled manpower, very importantly to handle the medical side, the relief side, etc. of this particular crisis. So India has actually set up what is called as rapid response teams in several of these countries. And the Mission Saga, especially to Comoros and Mauritius, Mission Saga is very historic according to Indian diplomats themselves. It has unveiled new capabilities that India is actually working on. The fourth aspect that we need to remember is bilateral and international efforts. Now, one thing that we need to understand, I'm going to stop right here. What has stopped in our normal activities? Have we stopped eating? Have we stopped doing our normal things? We are doing everything within the confines of a small space. Now, today we are handling a huge FDP. Normally, a faculty development program will happen in a different way. But today we are still doing it. So likewise, any country, any region, any alliance, their activities are also simultaneously going on. And the G20, the group of 20 most powerful countries, convened an important conference, virtual conference, the first ever virtual conference on 26th March. India also participated in the conference. The picture in the slide, which is below, is of the conference of our Prime Minister attending that virtually from his office. And importantly, India also held the first virtual bilateral summit between India and Australia. When we say bilateral, which means the relationship between two particular countries. So Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister of Australia, in fact appreciated our Prime Minister for holding this kind of a virtual bilateral summit in discussing India's prospects with Australia. And they both of them made a statement that this is going to be the new model of conducting business going forward. So that is really highly appreciable. This is a very interesting slide. So when we say good morning, we say namaste in India, vanakkam in Tamil. So likewise, world over, this namaste diplomacy has become a very interesting trend, of the serious context in a lighter vein. I must mention that from Donald Trump to the Irish Prime Minister to his left, he is of Indian, origin, and to the Israeli Prime Minister, Mr. Netanyahu, all of them have started, greeting people with a namaste, because touch, we are trying to avoid touch and physical contact as much as possible. And these leaders, are using the soft power diplomacy. This is called as soft power diplomacy, the namaste diplomacy, to, show to their own constituents, their own country people, that there is an alternative to the handshake, the humble namaste, which has existed for thousands of years in our country. We have also exported that now, not only medical supplies, not only, diplomatic efforts. So the COVID chapter in Indian diplomacy can be given in a few things. India's medical diplomacy, which we saw earlier in the slides, very, very important. And dispatch of doctoral teams, helping local administrators in capacity building, speedy medical clearances, early evacuations. Secondly, India was one of the countries. India is currently running this huge scheme called Vande Bharat scheme in evacuating its own citizens. But India was one of the first countries in evacuating citizens stuck up in Wuhan, later in the Gulf, where the virus spread massively before traveling across. And in fact, India not only helped out people from, from our own country, but it also helped out several, thousands of citizens from smaller countries such as Bangladesh, Myanmar, Maldives. So, for example, if a flight or a ship goes to China to pick up, airlift some of our citizens, if citizens from Maldives or Nepal or Madagascar are also there, India actually laid out the logistics, panned out the logistical teams to bring them also back to India, and from here they were sent to their own countries. This is, a classic example of crisis management, logistics management in these times. And India quarantined these people before sending them off. Neighbors and distant relatives. So international relations is a very challenging, dynamic field. So each country has their own dynamism, own challenges, internal and external. And in this time, India has actually reached out to many of its neighbors and, distant neighbors on a compassionate basis, on a one-to-one basis. India sent a wheat consignment to Afghanistan through Iran's Chabahar port. And with respect to Malaysia, India actually supplies malarial drugs, anti-malarial drugs, which has improved its bilateral relations. And several doctoral teams have been sent to Jordan, Oman, UAE, and India has developed its medical-related humanitarian assistance to Israel. Israel is India's huge supplier of arms, but India has actually helped out in reverse this time. The Namaste diplomacy, we just saw the Namaste diplomacy now. India's soft power through performing arts, Ayurveda, cuisine, diplomacy can be seen. It is a non-contact greeting, viewed as favorable, healthy, and a safe practice in these times. Now, new challenges, the new international order is yet to unfold, but we are seeing a lot of changes, a lot of perspective changes that are happening on the ground. This particular slide on a chessboard kind of symbolizes the situation we find international alliances being right now. Challenged, economically, socially, culturally, militarily, and in several aspects. So going forward, what is the reason behind the COVID diplomacy that India is showing? One, Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam. In Sanskrit, it means the whole world is a single family. We can actually look at the whole world as a single family. We are all, after all, part of, the single species called Homo sapiens. So maybe we are differentiated by artificial borders that we have created for our own conveniences. Several identities. We are all different based on several identities. Some we have chosen, some that have been, inscribed on us. But the fact is, I recall now a book which I was reading last month by the author Yuval Noah Harari. I'm sure many of you must have read the book on Homo sapiens. We were not just one race who defeated, other animal races. In fact, there were 7 species. According to him, he establishes there were 7 species of humans, and out of which today there are only the Homo sapiens who actually overtook the other species at that point of time in history, thousands and thousands of years back. So when we say Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam, I feel it's quite natural, especially during these crises, to signify, to understand, to have empathy towards all, because we are all humans after all. So differentiations should not be treated prioritarily, at this point of time. In fact, the differences should be submerged, and we should all try to be compassionate towards each other. And that is what one of the most important reasons behind India's diplomacy is. So medical assistance, to international partners is seen as goodwill, and an evolving nature of Indian foreign policy. And this has been highly acknowledged in all the platforms by all the countries. Second view is collaboration over confrontation. Very important, these 2 words, collaboration over confrontation, practically signifies what is happening right now in the world. Cities, these kind of crises bring out the best and the worst, not only for individuals, but also for nation states. 3 months back, a country would have stood for something. 3 months down the line, those countries are collapsing under the virus. We see new countries coming up and shaping the global international order right now by what they are doing diplomatically, nationally and internationally. So when the huge powers, United States and China, were in a war of words, countries like India have actually stepped up, silently doing work, collaborating with several regional, national partners, and stimulating their efforts single-mindedly into providing a humanitarian, assistance in this particular time. And this crisis presents an interesting opportunity to India. India definitely benefits not only by goodwill, but it also, provides a very different regional perspective for countries who are looking for, alternative powers, multilateral powers. And on the other hand, India has to be nimble-footed to use this opportunity even more to build up its goodwill and also to elevate its status. Interestingly, India is now one of the non-permanent members in the United Security Council. Very recently, India was selected unanimously. We secured 184 votes of 184 countries, and we are going to be one of the members of the 15 members for 2021 and 22. Now, what is the new world order? This is the way, this is what is going to happen. And before Corona, it's going to be AC, DC. No, it's going to be, before Corona and after Corona. That's going to become the words, the norm that we are going to be following. Far-reaching changes can be anticipated, in geoeconomics and geopolitics. We are seeing it slowly unfolding, but we will see it by the end of the year. We are going to see new changes across the world. And India has to gear up for the new challenges, definitely. The message is very clear. The effort is there. India's careful diplomatic reach is reflective of the country's own values and also the country's geopolitical interest. And the generosity, the mindfulness of India has turned the world attention towards our country in a very positive manner in this crisis. So with this, I'm going to coming to the end of this lecture. I hope you found it useful. So feel free to reach out me on social media. I'm available. And this particular course is going to be very, very useful for all of you. I hope you all, pick up a lot of learnings and try to read a lot more and write a lot more papers and contribute to the literature in your own universities, with your own research students or in excellent international platforms. A lot of sources are available. Please look up online, see if you can start writing a good article and see if you can link your existing research agenda with what is upcoming. First thing, as faculty, we should always remember, as I was told by my peers and colleagues when we attend international conferences, we are repeatedly told to have a research agenda. What do you mean by a research agenda? I'm sure you're all aware. I don't have to tell you anything about that, but please be aware not to be away from what's happening around us. So this particular COVID-19 gives us a great opportunity to read a lot and to express a lot. So I hope you'll all be able to publish more, write more, and do a lot more research from our own perspectives in this time. So thank you so much.
Thank you, madam, for the wonderful lecture and the information you have shared with us. And madam has highlighted the generosity. Excuse me. And generosity, and how the Indian government, through its generosity, bettered the relationship with the neighbor countries and even with the powerful countries in Europe and USA. Now this session is open for discussion, and the participants who want to get clarification from the resource person can raise your hands, and one by one we can allot the respondents, the participants, to raise the questions and get clarification from the resource person. Okay, raise it now. கை எங்க இருக்கும்? I just admit Shafi Ahmed. Shafi Ahmed, you proceed and ask the question. Shafi Ahmed, you just unmute from your side. There is no response from Shafi Ahmed. I just admit Gulab Mir. Gulab Mir?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible. You just ask the question.
Okay. Thank you very much. This is Gulab Mir from Afghanistan, sir. Thank you very much for this nice presentation. I appreciate, madam. I hope we could receive her PPT on the text box, because this is the very informative presentation. I have a question regarding this session. Madam, as you know, the situation of the pandemic is going on in all over of India and the world, but still there is no stop of, there is no solution for this, and for this will be continue for longer and more than 1 year, or still there is no medicine, there is no product of medicine to stop this pandemic crisis in India. What do you think about the education system in the next year and the future, the challenge of education system in the upcoming academic year? And also, what is the solution for the quality of education? Because now the pandemic has put the crisis on over there in the quality of education, because everybody will not be able to receive their online facilities, especially the rural students. They are not capable to have the proper connection, and they will not have the proper facility to connect, to have accessories to connect themselves with online education system. This is because today in the center and urban area, people will have the accessories for this education system, online education system. But mostly today, the private will be over there on the village people, a village student, and the student who are out of this accessories. They will be facing a lot of challenge on education system. What is your prediction, and what is your suggestion for this challenge and issue in the future?
Yeah, thank you, Kulabmir, and I really appreciate you joining this session today. Now, you've asked a very important question regarding education. Even yesterday, we saw in the news, UGC University Grants Commission Committee has submitted the revised, suggestions which were given earlier to our Ministry of Human Resource Development, suggesting we push the academic year start to October of 2020 instead of the earlier suggested August. That's like October is another 3 months away. And the next suggestion was to do away with the examinations for those who are in the final semester. This is, I think, holds good for arts and science students across India. Now, the UGC has submitted it. I mean, they have submitted it to UGC. We have to see the proposal, how it shapes up, because that is going to shape up your question's answer. So at this point of time, the digital divide that we have in India is quite challenging. That we are able to see, apart from the data, we are practically seeing the impact of the digital divide. Now, the handling of pandemic becomes the first priority. At the same time, economical livelihood is a second priority. So, saving lives versus livelihoods. In that challenge, somewhere the narrative has moved away from other areas. Now, the government has several initiatives, but all these are online. The Swayam Prabha portal, which is a very good portal if you want to seek courses. Now we have Atma Nirbhaya, that new proposal that the government has come up. They are going to put up courses for NCERT class 1 to 12 by August 2020 online. Again, all these are online. Some initiatives from Kerala government started on television also. They had a small, like a cable TV that we all have. A dedicated channel was started. But again, all these are connectivity based. We don't have another alternative. That is the reality. I am not going to give you an answer directly just because I have to answer you. The honest answer is we don't have an alternate system of education apart from one-to-one, that is classroom lectures or online portal. So online portal itself has accelerated because of COVID. Otherwise, online portal was not, a very popular alternative even till March. So now we are looking online option very seriously because we don't have another option. There is no third option. Hopefully, I think this particular crisis will evolve a different thinking when all the stakeholders, our Ministry of Human Resource Development sits together after this pandemic and discusses an alternative. The medicine, with regard to what you asked, it's not easy to develop a vaccine. And vaccine is not the only solution also. Please remember, we are not medical experts to give you a probable answer, but there is a lot of effort going on across the world by developed countries and medical organizations in developing a vaccine. United Kingdom is one of the first countries to have started medical trials on human beings. This was reported yesterday in BBC with a clinical vaccine. So we just have to hope and pray, but it's going to take a year at least to have a vaccine where we can go pay to the doctor and get a vaccine. So this is the new normal. Singapore has started schools. Schools are functioning in spite of Singapore having a very high caseload. They're doing thermal checks for the students in the beginning of the school day and the end of the school day. They are sent back home. They wear masks in the school. This is something that we will also be doing in another 3 to 4 months. So that's my answer to your question.
Madam, I have a...
Globmir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, I have a small doubt. Can I share it?
Yes, you can share.
Yes. Thank you very much, madam, for your answers. One more doubt is there. That's okay. In this critical situation, I think the online can be only the option to apply for these courses and the classes. Still there is another challenge that is related to for PhD researchers, because particularly the PhD researchers who are in the science background. The science background, they have to work on the lab, or they have to work especially and chemistry researchers, especially the physics and other applied science, they have to go and work in the laboratory section, and they have to do their own work. It is not possible to through the online to collect the data or all these things. So I think if this situation is going to prolong, and then the research procedure will be a prolonged procedure for a long period. The researchers have to follow it. It means it will be postponed their term of their own courses. What is your suggestion for this type of researcher who want to follow their research and complete their research as soon as possible without the long delay? And is there any option for this? I want to know some of your suggestions.
Only answer is hope and time. We have hope that is inbuilt. Time, the universities, the government has given us time. Thankfully, they have been very understanding. We just have to hope that we can all go back to our classrooms and research rooms and continue where we left off. But if you ask me, is there an alternative? It varies from subject to subject. An arts or humanities person can probably have more access to research now. They have more time to access a lot of resources online. But instead of looking at narrowly only your research, I would suggest equip yourself with more skills during this time. The more learning that sometimes when you're doing a PhD, when you're singular research, your mind is only focused on that deadline, finishing it, getting a doctorate. But now this time has actually helped you to stop, for a moment, observe and learn more. Probably you will be able to produce better research. You never know. So I would suggest you to be positive rather than negative at this time.
Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you, Globmir, for your question. And it is interesting that only some researchers, as a resource person has rightly pointed out, can be done with the online resources. And now there is a question by Shafi Ahmed through the chat box. He asked that whether India can utilize this crisis situation to emerge as a global leader.
Thank you, Shafi. We are fighting two pandemics, as somebody had written in their Twitter feed this morning. One is the actual pandemic classified by WHO, and the other is the border pandemic that we seem to be having for the last, I don't know how many decades or years. So India has the potential, definitely, no denying that. India has good resources. It is utilizing its resources, but it is not so easy. So, for example, yesterday, the ambitions of China, India's border situation with China the last 2-3 months, and which has escalated especially last week, has prompted several changes in the global order. How? That is your question, because it's something which is specifically related to India and China. China, as we know, is this superpower, which is trying to, do a lot. It has a lot of ambitions and desires. Let's not go into that. But how it has shaped the new global order, because Singapore, countries like Japan, countries like Australia are actually looking at realigning economical contacts. Realigning, for example, 5G. We all have 4G. The next trend is upcoming is 5G. There's been a huge problem with US and China with regard to the mobile company called Huawei. I'm sure you're all aware of that company. They are one of the pioneer providers of 5G. Now, Singapore has decided to give the huge contract of its nation's 5G potential to a company which is not linked to China. This is seen as a major step in reshaping global order. Likewise, many countries are doing small things, but it's going to take some more time for India to emerge as a singular global leader. I don't think that is possible anymore. I think that's my personal opinion based on my reading and research. But if it happens, yeah, I'll be very proud.
Thank you, madam. Now I request unmute Dr. S. Naga Seshamma Pinky. Dr. Naga Seshamma, just unmute from your side.
Hello.
Yes, proceed.
Do you hear me?
Yes, you are audible.
Sir, good morning, ma'am. We are enriched and enlightened with your valuable speech. Hello.
Good morning, ma'am. Please, I can hear you. Please.
Ma'am, this small, this one. See what you told with regard to lockdown. because of lockdown, now it is happening. What is happening in India is appreciable. I do agree with that, but I think it is too early to lock down at that time. Now it is a peak time. Now it is, so we are thinking about the financial crisis in India instead of going for lockdown. So is it feasible time now to go for lockdown, or it is earlier, ma'am?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. I'm happy you asked that question. A lot of people are standing in these two stands. Okay, whether India was right or whether India is wrong, but there is no singular answer. I would like you to understand, rather than simply reading headlines and opinions on social media and print media platforms, I would urge you sincerely to understand two things. Lockdown is not a solution for COVID-19. Social distancing, lockdown, wearing a mask are precautionary measures. If India did not impose such an early lockdown, the actual predictions by very credible international organizations like WHO and national organizations is our caseload today is 4,75,000, out of which 1,81,000 are the actual patients. Nearly 2.5 lakhs have been discharged, but the number is 4,75,000 and odd. It would have been more than 15 lakhs, 1-5. Now, we have a health system and all these systems are managed by humans, not chatbots, not robots. So the lockdown actually enabled us to prepare for this peak. India is right now so close to peak. If I would urge you to follow Professor Shamika Ravi on Twitter. So if you can actually take 5 minutes of your time today, please go online, follow Professor Shamika Ravi. She is a statistician. She gives daily charts based on India's caseload. So that will give you a projection how far we are from the peak. Now we are in the peak. In fact, if we didn't impose the lockdown, India would have crumbled. Our human force system, health-wise, government-wise, the frontline experts, the corona warriors would have crumbled in the stress. But now we have beautifully managed. And in fact, India's caseload is not spread evenly in India. Very few states, 2-3 states, account for nearly 80% of the infection. Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Delhi are reaching their peak now. Other states are having the second wave now. Telangana we are seeing now. Andhra we are seeing now. So this is a cycle. So we reach the peak, the curve has to go up, only then it will come down. So the lockdown was perfect decision, if you ask me personally, and it is being criticized, definitely. And now we are opening up the economy. Now is not the time to go into lockdown. We have to learn to be with this condition by social distance.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Nagasheshamma. There was a question in the chat box by Nagaraju Vadapalli. He's asking that how can we understand the aggressive policy of USA towards in India while in relation to the medicine HCQ, because more than requesting, USA demanding the medicine, what kind of policy, what kind of relationship in the USA has on India? How can we understand this aggressive policy of USA? By Nagaraju Vadapalli.
Thank you, Nagaraj Vadapalli, for your question. But factually, it was not the policy of the United States government officially. It was the language used by its president on social media, on his Twitter handle. So that's why, again, we are all become habitual into reading something and reacting. We should learn to respond. So as researchers and as faculty, it's our primary duty as learned people who are actually guiding, other students and researchers into the next generation of public administrators. We should not, react to such kind of comments. The United States government officially never ever threatened or even gave a veiled threat to India. It was Mr. Trump on his personal social media account on Twitter, not even his official account. He put out a statement like that. But only if we see something like that, we'll read that. Otherwise, I don't think many of them would have even read such a comment. So please don't take it personally. It was never a threat. I think India, did something which it would have done either way. So it was perceived by a lobby that, the threat worked and India was pressurized into giving medicines. No, that's a wrong perception. I think as learned people, we should be aware that personal comments are different from official statements.
Thank you, madam, for the nice response. And another one question from BG Kulkarni. He's asking that whether the China, because China is providing assistance to neighbor countries who are neighbor to us and neighbor to China also, whether they have a better diplomacy than us, even during this COVID-19. So this was the question by BG Kulkarni.
Thank you, Mr. Kulkarni. Your question is very, very essential to understand two things. India's diplomacy is catching up with China's. That is the fact. No denying that. But today, China's aggressive diplomacy is actually becoming a problem for many countries. China and India had a competition in providing resources to India's neighbors, more particularly. So, China has been one of the main donors for WHO. But China also donated a lot to the African countries. But China's diplomacy is very aggressive. So if they won't say take it or leave it. No, it's not like India's punch shield, diplomacy. So China's aggressive diplomacy has meant that a lot of countries, from Pakistan to Sri Lanka to Bangladesh to several countries, have been caught in what is called as a debt trap. So, structurally providing debt, under say the Belt Road Initiative, the Health Silk Road Initiative, all these kind of diplomatic efforts are very aggressive, self-oriented diplomatic efforts based on China. China didn't do anything on humanitarian basis. You should also remember that. Please read up more. You'll be more interested in knowing how China is actually occupying these countries without physically occupying them. They are economically targeting countries using their own diplomatic and economic power. It is slowly becoming, very gradually becoming counterproductive for China. So India is catching up, but India is a much better country in terms of diplomatic efforts, as is seen right now during coronavirus time.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for the wonderful response and wonderful lecture. So this is a time to thank resource person for spending her valuable time with us, and more than an hour almost she has spent her valuable time with sharing the PPTs with more information. And I think the participants must have got much benefit out of your lecture, madam. Thank you, madam. Thank you, Anbu Armugam, madam, for your lecture. And for the participants, madam is our regular resource person in our previous online courses also. Madam has been our regular resource person, and always she has contributing meaningfully in all our online courses. And today also, she has proved her academic skills in this lecture. So thank you, madam. Thank you once again from the Department of Political Science and coordinators, Dr. Neelam Pandey and Dr. J. Subramaniam. And I thank you all. Thank the resource person. Right. Participants keep on asking the PPT share. So all the PPTs which was displayed by the resource persons will be shared in your WhatsApp group today. And whenever the resource person shares his PPT, then soon after the lecture, the PPT will be shared in your WhatsApp group. And another one instruction, we keep on telling you that some of the participants entering the Zoom app with your phone brand, not your own name, because it is difficult for us to prepare the attendance and all. So instead of, I can see some Galaxy, Lenovo, Samsung. So these are all the usernames are there. Just to change the name while you are entering in it. So it will be easy for us and then to prepare the attendance and certificate also. So for the next class, especially for the today's afternoon session onwards, we just make it. Again, I thank all the participants and resource person for your time with us. And thank you all. I meet you today at 2:30 p.m. Thank you all. Thank you.